morning, everyone. Thank you, Ashima, for the wonderful introduction about I Am Americas. And it indeed is a very good platform in order to network across various batches, across various industries, across various regions. So without much ado, I'm delighted in presenting to you Mr. Khanna, who's going to galvanize this Pinnacle audience with his inaugural address. The New York Times dubbed Mr. Khanna as a rising star. His meteoric rise in the realm of public policy has attained media-wide attention, as well as a lot of Indian Americans across the Bay Area as well as the nation can relate to him. He, with his unique initiatives in the space of youth development, concentrating specifically on high school children, will focus majorly on education and job creation. He is all for initiating computer coding right at an early stage when you are in school. No wonder then the Silicon Valley evangelists consider him as their star number one. Right since 2009, when President Obama appointed him as the Deputy Assistant Secretary at the US Department of Commerce, Ro has played inspiring roles in various initiatives dealing with public and private policies. He traveled across the country, meeting a lot of American manufacturers to learn how Washington could help to create jobs. And all this offered him insights, which he presented with his widely acclaimed book called Entrepreneurial Nation, Why Manufacturing is Still the Key to America's Future. As a teacher, lawyer, and a very young, inspiring leader, he is definitely the person to go to in order to take an approach on leadership in the age of transparency. And it seems he's really trying his best in demonstrating such leadership traits when many other senior leaders across various industries are still groping for direction. Current activities of Ro include his engagement as visiting lecturer at Department of Economics, Stanford, as the role of adjunct professor at Santa Clara Law School, and board positions in various other initiatives. Following his address, Ro will join us in the panel discussion that will immediately follow. So, ladies and gentlemen, presenting before you, Ro Khanna.
Thank you so much for that very thoughtful and generous introduction. Thank you for inviting me to speak this morning. My cousin is a IAM graduate, and so I had told him last week that I was coming, and he was very excited. He actually immigrated into this country in the 1990s and is settled in New Jersey and is very, very proud of his affiliation. So I'm very familiar with what a strong network and a strong education all of you bring to the country and to the world. And it's an honor to be here. Let me focus on two ideas because I want to be brief and then open it up more for a panel discussion. One is this idea of transparency. And as some of you know, I've been running for Congress in Silicon Valley, and so I've gotten to talk to a lot of folks. And there's probably never been a time in our country's history where the trust deficit has been as large as it is. A lack of faith and trust in certainly Washington, a lack of trust in Wall Street and the institutions of Wall Street. Even for those of you who are football fans with the athletic scandals, there's a lack of trust even in college athletics. There is a time in our country's history where people are questioning what it means to be a transparent leader and whether they can trust people in positions of leadership. And my view is that it's not just the political class or those who seek political office who have a role and a responsibility to help overcome this trust deficit. All of you also share in that challenge as leaders in technology and business, and how we're going to build the economic and institutions that are going to restore people's confidence in this country. From my perspective, what I have done in trying to change the political culture is said that we have to take 6 different steps, all, regardless of party, in trying to restore public trust. First, I've said that I'm not going to take, and no one should take, any of the special interest money that has, in my judgment, tainted American politics. If you look at Citizens United and some of the recent Supreme Court decisions, what they have basically allowed is a few wealthy individuals to contribute enormous amounts of money to influence a political process and have lack of transparency. So the reality is it's very difficult for any one individual to go to Congress and say, I'm going to overturn Citizens United, I'm going to get money out of politics, because the reality is you're going to get outvoted and not going to be able to do so. And so the 6 pledges that I've taken is regardless of what happens in the political process, I personally will never take any money from lobbyists, from corporate interests, from any special interests. And it's not because I think, that I'm more moral or anything. I just think we have to have a fundamental reset in our political process. I've said I'm going to buy my own health care insurance, so I'm on a leave of absence from Wilson Sonsini, and instead of going and buying Cobra, I went on Covered California. Hopefully all of you are insured don't have to go on Covered California, but it's the site that I've paid for Blue Cross, Anthem Healthcare. Now the reason that I think is important is members of Congress have these special health care benefits, and if you're going and representing someone and you're never actually abiding by the laws you're creating, it creates a disconnect. So I've said every member of Congress should buy their own health care insurance without the special subsidies. I've said I'm not going to participate in the congressional pension system. Members of Congress, after 5 years in Congress, at the age of 62, can get pension for the rest of their life. I don't know any other job that does that. I often joke, my dad was an IIT graduate. He came here in the 1960s, and he had the same job at Roman Haas, a chemical engineering company, for over 30 years. And I often joke with the students I teach, I said, none of you are going to have the same job for 30 years. In this world, you're going to do 6, 7, 8 jobs. And I said, well, actually, there's one exception. If you get elected as a member of Congress, you may get a job for 30 years. But the reality is that this congressional pension system is just totally out of date. I'm 37 years old. If I go to Congress 5 years, at 42, I would get pension after if I left Congress from 62 till the rest of till the end of my life. And I said I'm not going to participate in that and rely on Social Security. I said I'm not going to take a single special interest trip when I get to Congress. These members of Congress get flown around with lobbyists and special interest groups. They take them and their families to trips all over the world, and they lobby in the process. And I said there's no problem with members of Congress traveling on official business. If they have to go to China or India or Afghanistan 20 times, they should go. But on taxpayer official business, not on these special interest junkets, and we should end that. And finally, I said I'm not going to take a single pay increase. The reality is members of Congress aren't affluent. They make $171,000, but that's 3 times the median wage. And while the median wage in this country stagnated between 2001 and 2009, members of Congress voted themselves 7 different pay increases. Again, creating this disconnect between a governing class and the people they're supposed to represent. I give these examples because, not because I think that these are radical or somehow make me any better than my opponents or colleagues, but because I think that the only way we can inject transparency in government is not through waiting for legislation, but having people use their personal examples to bring change. And my guess is that that applies in the corporate and business world as well. That it's not sufficient to just say, well, we're going to wait till our board or our CEO or our companies adopt certain policy changes. I think everyone can be personally an agent of change by adopting a certain set of ethical practices or transparent practices that help us reclaim a sense of transparency in government and in the financial sector. And I think as leaders, all of you have the opportunity to do that. The second area of the campaign that I have focused on is having a more honest conversation about the global economy. For too long, our politicians in this country have stood up and said Benedict Arnold CEOs are shipping jobs overseas. We are losing the middle class because of outsourcing to China and India. We are going to stop all trade or outsourcing and return jobs to the United States. Now, I've written a book on bringing manufacturing back to the United States, but the reality is that the political rhetoric of surrounding globalization in this country has not been sophisticated enough and has not taken into account the realities of the global economy. I start out my class at Stanford by asking students how many of them own an iPhone. Almost all of them raise their hand. And I say, how many people think that the iPhone should be assembled and made completely in the United States? And of course, they've all known I've written a book on bringing manufacturing back to the United States, and as good students, they all raise their hand. And then I give them an economics paper by one of the famous professors who says that it would cost $2,300 for an iPhone if it was to be made and assembled completely in the United States. And I ask my students, how many people want to pay $2,300 for their iPhone? And no one raises their hand. The reality is that that level of complexity of thought is actually missing in the United States Congress. There is no sense about how there is a trade-off between job creation in the United States and yet cheaper consumer prices that is sustained of the American middle class at a time of stagnant wages. And it is a trade-off, but it is one that policymakers have to grapple with. We have to think strategically about what jobs are going to go offshore and what jobs are we going to keep in the United States. And how do we prepare people for those jobs that are going to exist? And we have to think strategically about the structural changes in the economy that are putting pressure on the middle class. Does anyone know how much revenue the average employee at Apple generates for the company? $2 million. One employee generates $2 million. Ford Motor Company used to be, when you made a lot of money in this country, you hired a lot of people. And that no longer is the case. Technology is displacing low and middle skilled work and allowing companies to create extraordinary wealth without having to hire a lot of people. And so we have to, as policymakers, think about the structural changes in the economy, recognize that people are going to need more proficiency with machines, more understanding of how to operate and create machines and robotics and CNC machines and 3D printing to have the jobs of the future, and recognize the displacement that technology is causing in low and middle skilled work and the challenges of globalization. Until we start to have the more complex conversation in this country about how we prepare people for jobs that are actually going to exist, we are doing a disservice to folks who aspire to be part of the middle class in this 21st century economy. So transparency in political leadership, complexity and intellectual honesty about the global economy are the two things that I hope to contribute to the political debate when elected. The district of which I'm running in, which some of you are all aware of, is perhaps the most unique district in the world. And let me end with this. The district is the largest, the only Asian majority district in the continental United States. Think about that for a second. You have Chinese population, Vietnamese population, Filipino population, South Asian population. The district will look like America will look 20 years from now. And in this district is Google, Apple, Intel, Yahoo, Cisco, LinkedIn, Tesla, Flextronics, Microsoft's offices. It is as if you drew boundaries around the heart of economic and innovation for the nation and the world. Who represents this district matters for the future of tech policy, for the future of innovation, for the future of our relationships with Asia. And it also happens to be the largest Indian American population anywhere in the United States. Now, there's never been someone of Indian origin who has run and not converted their religion and won. And I'm a very secular person. I was born of Hindu faith, but Jefferson talked about there being no religious test in the American Constitution. And I believe that it will set a great precedent for the next generation to know when we win that someone of Indian origin can run proud of their heritage, being Hindu, whether they're Sikh, Muslim, and not have to convert their faith and be able to participate in American politics. But from this district, we as a nation have a huge comparative advantage. Because the reality is, in a global economy, there is only one nation in the whole world that has people from all over the world. When I worked at the Department of Commerce, and my boss was Gary Locke, who was then the ambassador to China, when we negotiated with China, we sent Gary Locke, a Chinese American. China didn't send someone of American origin to negotiate with us. We literally have, from this place, a fulcrum to export, to engage with people around the world. And what we need is the right policies. Policies that embrace globalization, that say that we should embrace countries like China and India as strategic partners, not adversaries, to help shape innovation. And if we do that, this century can be one of the most optimistic in terms of innovation and technology, led here from Silicon Valley with an extraordinary diverse population. That is my hope for the region. I know all of you will play an extraordinary role in shaping that global economy, and I appreciate your inviting me here to help inaugurate this conference, and I look forward to your leadership on these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Ru, for that insightful address. And when we have leaders like you who try to enforce transparency at that level, it definitely percolates down to trust that is with us. Now let's move on to the panel discussion. The days of utopia in the traditional marketplace are over. As the internet and mobile usage increases, we have technology transforming the ways in which transparency and accountability was initially perceived. We are witnessing a transition in an era of mass customization. And here is a place where businesses which fail to embrace change will become dinosaurs. Yes, you heard it right, totally extinct. Our customers today value premium on quality, as well as an umpteen number of times we have customers asking for more transparency in terms of the policies, in terms of what the product the company is trying to put forward. A recent HBR article titled "Transparency is the New Technology Imperative" went on to state that transparency has become a brand insurance. Transparency with technology is like selling apples with more. Everyone agrees it's the best, but few people follow. The rewards of trust are definitely powerful, but then our leaders are fearful. What these particular transparency-related decisions will have an effect on the company decisions as well as the company brand perception. Whether these decisions will harm the company or harm a certain group of people. What all these decisions will try to create an image of the company. So all of these questions and many more with our panel discussion.
It is my absolute pleasure to introduce Ankit Jain, who is returning to Pinnacle this year as our panel moderator. Ankit was a panelist last year on the Mobile, Social and Cloud panel, and I know I speak for the entire Pinnacle team when I say that we are very glad to have him back. Ankit is an ex-Googler, and he is the founder and CEO of Quetra, which is a startup in the mobile intelligence and big data space. While he was at Google, he was the head of search and discovery for Google Play, where he led the design and building of all algorithms and infrastructure that power top lists, personal recommendations, and the search engines in the Play Store. One interesting thing about Ankit that you may not know about is that he has actually been a professional dancer in a Bollywood dance company. So without taking any more time away from the panel, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ankit Jain and the rest of the panel.
Great. Why don't we have all the panelists up on stage and just get started out?